Welcome to the deep dive. We are diving deep today into The Last of Us.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of taken over, hasn't it? I mean, everybody's talking about it.
Oh, it really has. I mean,
Hmm.
based on this game, the video game that everybody loved, and now it's a huge television series.
And it is. And we're going to do our best to kind of break it down and give you some important insights about, as of today, March 20th, 2025, where this show is and where it's headed. And we're going to be looking at all the stuff, I mean, from the premise and setting, the actors, the plot, the themes, how it was received critically, and even production, behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, that's what's really interesting, I think, about The Last of Us, is that journey from this beloved video game into this whole other medium of TV and kind of what made it work.
Yeah. So season one, and I'm sure most people listening are familiar with it at this point, The Road to Ellie, they called it. It premiered January 15th, 2023. 9 episodes, right?
Yeah.
9 episodes. And it took place in a post-apocalyptic United States, 2003, the outbreak, and then 20 years later. And the whole show really hinges on, the relationship between Joel and Ellie. And they even had that great tagline, "When you're lost in the darkness, look for the light."
Oh, yeah.
For someone coming into this totally fresh, what's so great about that dynamic, that core relationship that the whole show hangs on?
For me, it's the fact that you have this backdrop of just complete apocalypse. And, I mean, we're talking a real-world fungus. I mean, the cordyceps outbreak in 2003, that's a mutated fungus.
Yeah, it's really scary. Like, that could actually happen.
And it jumps to humans.
Yeah.
I mean, how terrifying is that? And that leads to these infected, which are horrifying on their own, but it's that opening with Joel losing his daughter,
Oh, Sarah.
Sarah.
Wow.
That sets up the entire premise for his character.
Yeah.
He's hardened because of that loss.
Yeah.
So you jump 20 years into the future, and he's smuggling in Boston. And then he meets Ellie, who's immune.
Yeah.
That offers a glimmer of hope, but also reopens that trauma that he's been trying to keep down all this time. So the whole series becomes, can he open himself up to love and care again?
It's a great setup. And the places they go, I mean, talk about intense and scary. Right out of the gate, they're escaping Fedra in Boston, and Tess is gone.
Yeah.
That was rough.
Huge loss early on.
And then they head to Kansas City and run into Kathleen. She was so interesting, this antagonist driven by revenge.
Yeah. And that leads to the introduction of Henry and Sam.
Oh my gosh, that was so hard.
Tragic ending to their story, but it
Yeah.
really sets the stakes. It's not just about running from these infected.
Right.
It's also about other survivors and what they're willing to do.
Right. So we're seeing that it's more than just physical survival, right? What's the show trying to say about what we as humans are willing to sacrifice to make it?
Yeah, that's always on your mind while you're watching. Kathleen goes down this path of ruthless violence.
Because of her grief, right?
Her grief, it's warped her. And Henry, he's desperate to protect his little brother, even when he's faced with the unimaginable. They're not just plot points. They're ways of exploring how we cope with this loss, this constant fear.
Yeah, I never thought about it that way. And then we go to Wyoming and see Tommy and Maria trying to rebuild something, a community,
Trying to find that normalcy, that stability. For Ellie, that's something she's never even known.
It was a nice break from all that intensity for a minute.
Yeah, but that sense of security is fleeting, isn't it? Because Colorado brings a whole new level of horror.
Oh, yeah, with Joel getting hurt like that.
Brutal. And it forces Ellie to become the protector.
Yeah, she really stepped up, didn't she?
She did. But that leads to David.
Oh, don't even get me started on David.
See, he's the perfect example of how far people will go.
Cannibalism. I mean, really.
It throws the whole idea of right and wrong into question, doesn't it? Is there even such a thing in this world? David was really effective because he acts like a savior at first.
Such a good guy, you think.
Then, bam, you see his true colors. You realize you can't trust anyone. Predator, prey, it all gets muddled.
And just when you thought it couldn't get more intense, they arrive in Salt Lake City, the Fireflies.
That ending, oh man, a cure that requires Ellie's death.
I was on the edge of my seat.
Joel's decision to intervene, to lie to her. There's no easy answer to that, is there?
Morally, it's just so complex, isn't it? You're rooting for him, but at what cost? Saving one life, but maybe dooming humanity?
It's a question you keep asking yourself long after the episode's over.
Yeah. And throughout it all, that grief just hangs over everything. It's almost like a character itself.
It's heavy, that's for sure, especially with Joel.
Sarah's death is always there, shaping his every move. Then there's this kind of accidental father-daughter thing that develops with Ellie, like a second chance.
Yeah.
And Ellie, I mean, she goes through so much, but she never gives up.
She's a fighter.
Yeah, she really is. It all kind of comes back to that, like, what does it even mean to be human in all of this?
Right. And it's worth noting that there's this underlying critique of things, too, you know? Like with Fedra, it's a look at authoritarianism. And with Kathleen, it's the cost of vengeance. It never ends well.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. But the actors really brought it all to life. I mean, Pedro Pascal, he's perfect as Joel. Gruff on the outside, but you see that brokenness underneath.
He really nails it.
And Bella Ramsey as Ellie. I mean, there was some backlash about the casting at first,
Yeah.
but she just nailed it. All the wit, the rage, the hope. And Anna Torv as Tess.
She was great. Like, down to earth in the middle of all the crazy.
Right. And Melanie Linsky as Kathleen.
Mm.
Chilling. It's like watching grief twist someone into this vengeful force.
You know, what else I have to mention is just how incredible the show looks.
Visually stunning.
Filmed in Alberta, Canada, and that budget, they say it was $10 to $15 million per episode. I mean, it shows the post-apocalyptic world is just so believable.
Those practical effects they use for the infected.
Especially the...
Oh, that's creepy.
Oh, yeah.
They sent shivers down my spine. And those massive sets, I mean, you really felt like you were in this destroyed America. And Bear McCreary's score.
Building off the game music, right?
Gustavo Santaolalla. Those haunting melodies just added another layer of depth to the whole thing. We can't forget episode 3. Long, long time.
Yeah, Bill and Frank's story.
That was a masterpiece, wasn't it? Almost a standalone episode.
People were talking about that one for weeks.
Yeah. Why do you think it resonated so much? I mean, it was totally separate from the main plot.
I think because it showed that even in this awful world, there could still be beauty and love. It showed that connection was still possible. Bill and Frank, their story, it mirrored Joel in a way with opening up to Ellie. It was just beautiful. I think people didn't expect that kind of tenderness in a post-apocalyptic show.
Totally agree. And then the reviews. I mean, wow. A 96% on Rotten Tomatoes, 84 on Metacritic, universal acclaim. They love the story, the emotions, the look of it, the chemistry between Pascal and Ramsey.
Amazing.
There were a few critiques about the pacing in some of the episodes, but overall, just incredible praise.
What does that tell you about adapting video games for TV? I mean, it seems like it can really be done well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It proves that if you capture the heart of the story and those characters, it doesn't have to just be about the action. And the awards. I mean, 8 Emmys in 2023.
Including Nick Offerman and Storm Reed as guest actors.
Yes, well-deserved. And the technical awards, too. And then there were the viewership numbers. It averaged 32 million an episode, HBO and Max combined, of course. At one point, it was even bigger than House of the Dragon.
Wow. Okay, so season 1 was a huge success. Now everyone's waiting for season 2, The Cost of Revenge. We know it premieres April 20th, 2025, with a shorter run, just 7 episodes, wrapping up around June 8th. The setting shifts to the West Coast, 5 years later, 2028, 2029, and the title kind of implies this whole idea of facing the consequences of your past.
Yeah, that's definitely a key theme in this next chapter. We pick up 5 years after Salt Lake City, and Joel and Ellie have found some peace in Jackson, but we know it can't last.
Right.
The choices he made, they're going to have huge repercussions.
It's like Chekhov's gun. You know it's going to go off at some point.
Exactly. And Ellie is front and center now. She's 19, shaped by everything that's happened, and especially by Joel's lie.
Yeah, that's got to have caused some damage to their relationship.
For sure.
Yeah.
But she's also hardened survivor now. A
Right.
total badass. Joel is more in a mentor role, but he's also got to face the music for his past actions.
And we've got some major new characters coming in to shake things up.
Oh, yeah. Abby Anderson, played by Caitlin Dever.
Heard of her? Yeah.
She's part of the WLF, the Washington Liberation Front. And her driving force, revenge. Her dad was the Firefly surgeon Joel killed to save Ellie.
Whoa.
It directly ties back to season 1 and makes you really think about what justice even means in this world.
I see where the Cost of Revenge title comes in now.
Right. And we also meet Dina, played by Isabella Merced. She's Ellie's girlfriend.
Oh, interesting.
Really important to Ellie. And she joins her on this quest for revenge after Jackson is attacked.
Things are escalating quickly. So where does Tommy fit in all of this?
Tommy's back, yeah. Driven by revenge, too. And then there's Jesse.
Dina's ex, right?
Yep. He becomes a key ally for Ellie. From what we know about the game and what's been hinted at in the trailers, it looks like Abby actually kills Joel early on.
Oh my God.
That act of violence sets Ellie off on a path of vengeance, and she ends up in Seattle to confront Abby and everyone involved.
That's heavy.
We're also going to get flashbacks. They'll show the fallout between Joel and Ellie after his lie. More insight into that broken relationship. And to make things even more complex, there's Lev and Yara, they're Seraphite runaways, and they get caught up with Abby.
Seraphites, they're the ones with those creepy masks, right?
Yeah. It forces everyone, characters and audience, to really think about who's right and wrong here. This season is only 7 episodes, and they're saying it's probably just going to cover part 2 of the game.
So it's going to end on a cliffhanger.
Most likely. Maybe their first confrontation, just to keep us all on the edge of our seats until the next season.
It seems risky, to have this character, Abby, who's so focused on revenge against a character that everyone loves.
Joel's a fan favorite, yeah. Yeah. What do you think makes that a good move for the show, and what could go wrong?
It's a great question. I think the risk is what makes it so interesting. It makes us face the hard truths about what happens when you make those tough choices. Joel did what he had to do, but it comes with a price. I mean, it could turn off viewers if they can't handle seeing him go through that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they handle it.
But if they can pull it off, like season 1...
Oh, it could be incredible. Exploring grief, revenge, and the fact that violence just breeds more violence.
It'll be a wild ride, that's for sure. So, season 2 dives into some really dark themes, huh?
Way darker. We're talking about revenge and trauma, and that question of what's right and wrong when you're just trying to survive.
Right.
The relationship between Joel and Ellie is going to be strained.
Yeah.
We'll see how that plays out. But then you also have these found families with characters like Dina and Lev, and it really shows how one act of revenge can just lead to more pain. It's like a never-ending cycle.
And Caitlin Dever as Abby. I've heard some mixed reactions to her casting.
People are talking, that's for sure. Abby's built different in the game.
Yeah.
But what we've seen so far, she looks like she's bringing something really compelling to the role.
Yeah.
I think she could make Abby sympathetic, even though she's doing some terrible things.
Yeah.
Isabella Merced as Dina. She seems perfect. That warmth and strength that Ellie's going to need. And then there's Catherine O'Hara.
Really? Catherine O'Hara?
Yeah. No one knows exactly who she's playing yet. Some people think maybe a therapist in flashbacks.
Wow.
Adds a whole other level of intrigue.
So production-wise, what do we know?
They filmed in British Columbia, which has some really diverse landscapes. Perfect for recreating that Pacific Northwest vibe from the game.
Yeah.
Budget, still massive. They haven't skimped more than $10 million an episode, it sounds like. They're going all out with the Infected, too.
Oh, yeah.
The Rat King they showed in the trailer.
I saw that. Nightmare fuel.
Yeah, that's going to be wild. It seems like they're taking part 2 from the game and streamlining it for television. Keeping the core of it, but maybe tightening things up a bit. And we've got Gustavo Santaolalla back for the score.
Along with Bear McCreary.
Yeah. That music adds so much emotion. So, no official reviews for season 2 yet, but the hype is real. Social media is going crazy.
I bet.
And previews in magazines. The Hollywood Reporter had a big one just this month. They're all saying it's going to be even darker and more intense than season 1.
That's saying something.
Fans are debating everything. Abby's casting, what's going to happen to Joel. But honestly, with this team behind it, I think we're in for something special. IGN called the trailer a gut punch of dread and beauty.
That's pretty spot on, I think.
Right. And with the premiere in April, it's going to be in the running for all the awards in 2026.
That means they're going to be interesting.
Pascal, Ramsey, Dever, they're all contenders.
Okay, so, big picture. What does The Last of Us mean for video game adaptations?
It's changed the game, honestly. Shows what's possible when you take these stories seriously.
And they're not just for gamers, right?
Exactly. Season 1 was massive. 40 million viewers at its peak, including reruns. It's everywhere. Memes, cosplay, people are still talking about it.
It's a phenomenon.
Totally. Season 2 premieres in April. We know that. HBO confirmed it. And then they've already greenlit Season 3 to finish up the Part 2 story.
Wow.
Looks like we're going to be in this world for a while. It's even having an effect in the real world. People are visiting the filming locations, going back and playing the game. And it's kind of scary, but people are talking more about the real cordyceps now.
That's true. It really has become so much more than just a TV show. It's part of the culture now. This intense survival horror, but with such a human story at its core.
You said it.
We've covered a lot in this deep dive.
Yeah.
The outbreak, the journeys, the upcoming season, the themes of survival, love and loss, revenge, the impossible choices these characters have to make.
All of it. And that leads me to a final thought for you. Given everything we've talked about, all the morally gray areas and the emotional roller coaster, what do you think is the biggest takeaway from The Last of Us? What's the lasting message of this story about humanity?
That's a great question to leave our listeners with. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
Thanks for having me.